Welcome everyone to Being at Home with Corbett. This is George Mumford. I'm excited about this opportunity to chat about how we can be in this time of challenging obstacles that we may have to overcome. And it's interesting because this is happening at the same time The Last Dance is being shown on ESPN. And it's interesting that I was thinking about what are some of the parallels in terms of, even though people know that the Bulls won the sixth championship, but third in a row in 1998, what a lot of people fail to realize is all of the challenges that were happening behind the scenes. If it was starting with Scottie Pippen being injured and not being available, as well as the general manager making the pronouncement that Phil Jackson would not be back as a coach of the Bulls, even if they won 82 games, and Michael Jordan stating that he would not play for another coach, which meant that this would be the last dance for Michael, Scotty, Dennis, and Phil, as well as several other of the players and coaches. And so the thing that I took away from it was when Michael was being questioned every day, is he going to stay? Is he going to leave? And I remember him saying that all I can do is be in a moment, and let's just focus on what's happening now. I don't want to think about what's going to happen at the end of the season. We just got to take it one day at a time, just be in a moment. And that took a lot of patience, just from the point of view of anyone having to face a throng of reporters, sometimes two or three times a day, depending on whether it was a game and they had shoot around. So he had to maintain course. And then if you go back to some of the previous episodes when Scottie Pippen didn't even know if he was going to come back to the Bulls or not, and he wasn't able to play for 2 months, once again, they had to go through the challenge of how were they going to hold on without Scotty. And so the word patience comes up, and that's what was demonstrated. And I think how it relates to us in this time of COVID, I'm in Massachusetts, and we just learned a couple of days ago that the stay-at-home order was not going to be lifted on May 4th, but it's going to be extended for another 2 weeks. And so that, to me, that means that the effort that we make, we've been doing really good progress as a country, especially as a state, Massachusetts, that we have to be steady with our efforts. Steady as she goes. We got to continue to do what we've been doing, even though it's more challenging because we've been in for a while and the weather's getting nicer. And it's an opportunity to really be steady, to show patience, to understand that even in this time, is it possible for us to focus on some of the benefits, some of the silver lining, if you will, in the clouds, that we have time to really focus in and think about, reflect on who we are being, and how can we use this time in a way that allows our latent abilities to rise to the top. And this idea of how do we generate some enthusiasm, some joy, and the idea of having a balance, because I think it's very obvious that this is stressful, it is hurt. So I talk about holding the hurt and the hope. So the idea is, feel the hurt and generate the hope. So it's this balancing act that we have to do, and that affects our ability to stay in place and not to break the stride or break the streak by going out and just engaging, forgetting about the social distancing that is really, really important that we sustain and maintain. And at the same time, we have to generate some ease, some well-being, some joy. And even myself, when I talk about this stuff, I have to be reminded that it's okay to smile, and it's okay that people are challenged and people are actually dying. At the same time, there are a lot of people that are doing making heroic efforts in terms of the people, even people staying at home. It takes a lot just to say no to doing what we're usually used to doing. But at the same time, all of the first responders, the healthcare workers, the doctors, emergency room staff, the researchers, that everybody is pulling together, and that's what it takes. It takes a team. It takes everyone. So it's not just the people that are on the front lines and in the hospitals. It's also us, that we are keeping ourselves safe and not being infected or infecting others, because we're staying at home and we're staying on course and steady as she goes, and generating some joy, some enthusiasm, as well as this idea of balance. That, yeah, there's the hurt, and we got to feel the hurt, but we also can generate the hope, which is looking at a future that we can live into, that we're excited about, and that we're going to get through this. And we got to focus on the opportunity that we have now, because everything is, it's like we're starting from scratch on some level, that we have to tear up the old plans and we have to create things that are consistent with living in the pursuit of happiness and freedom. So when I think about, or when I mention the idea of how I handle the hurt and the hope, balancing the two, is just really being able to just sit and breathe. And I know this idea of meditation and sitting and closing our eyes, that's definitely helpful. Prayer, even if we do some kind of love and kindness or compassion practice, that's helpful as well. But what is really simple is just sitting and breathing, being in the body and taking a few deeper in and out breaths, like, and just being with whatever we're feeling and just feeling it without having to have a story about it, and just breathing with it, just making space for it. I feel it. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. It's unpleasant. And there's a tendency to have aversion or move away from it, or to deny it. It's really more about just sitting and breathing and just feeling it and just acknowledging, yes, this is uncomfortable or unpleasant, and just breathing with it and being with it, because relief is just a breath away, that we can just breathe consciously with it. We don't have to close our eyes. We don't have to do anything. It's helpful just to sit still and just let it be and just breathe with it. So we're sitting and breathing and just knowing it and just letting whatever's there in the heart center, even if we put our hand on our heart, just feeling it and allowing it to be as it is. And then at some point we can just breathe in and let it go, and then focus on what we want, focus on what we can control, focus on how exciting it's going to be when we get back out, that we're going to have a level of gratitude when we get to do the things that we have taken for granted. Now, just being able to go for a walk or go outside and say hi to someone, a friend, or just to take a nice quiet walk, but to be able to just not push beyond what we're feeling now, just feeling it. So one of the lessons of life is about evolution, adaptability, if you will. So we have to adapt to things, to change, because things are always changing. So obviously we have a lot of adaptation we're doing now. But when I think of The Last Dance and the idea that in 1990, when the Chicago Bulls played the Detroit Pistons for the second time, and they lost, and it was very devastating. And one of the things that I remember B.J. Armstrong saying in an interview was that if we keep doing things the way we were doing it, we're going to keep getting the same results. We have to change something. We have to adapt. And so when Phil Jackson took over as the coach of the team, and they instituted the triangle offense, they had to be patient. It took them about a year to get to it. But at some point, they got to it. And by getting to it, they were able to adapt and evolve and expand who they were. So change has to do with the idea that we have to grow and evolve, and it's not just an individual growth; it's as a collective, as a community. So as a team, the Chicago Bulls, everybody had to get better. So that meant that they had to change something, and so everybody changed. And BJ mentioned that. He said that one of the things they typically do after the end of the season is they go on their vacations. But what they decided to do was not go on vacation, but to go into the gym and get back to work and to start to get stronger. So one of the adaptations Michael had to make was he didn't do a lot of strength and conditioning, strength training in his basketball career. But after being beaten up by the Detroit Pistons, he had to get stronger, and so that's an adaptation. Is got to lift weights. You got to meet the challenge, and that's the same with us. So there's things that muscles we have to exercise. Some of them physical, some of them mental, some of them emotional. That we have to exercise that we maybe didn't even know we had, or didn't know that there was a need for them. Like right now, the exercise of patience, or the exercise of staying in place and not being able to do the ordinary routines that we're used to having, and having to adapt to that, which means going through the hurt, going through the grief and the stages of grief. If I were to mention them quickly, bargaining, denial, anger, depression, and acceptance. And so we go through this stuff. And so you can see, and that's why I think sports is so exciting, because there's a spiritual dimension to it. But this idea of evolving, changing, creating, and adapting to things. And even as a great athlete like Michael Jordan, as great as he is, to move to the next level, or to bring the team to the next level, to make everyone else better, he had to do less and let other people do more. And so it's the same with us. Even though we may not be first responders, there's a lot we can do to help the process by just being ourselves, keeping ourselves safe and others safe, wearing a mask when we go out, and just being sensitive about the social distancing, and also keeping that 6 feet barrier when we go out and we do things. I've been doing a lot of podcasts and a lot of presentations, and a lot of times I forget to smile. And my motto is joy now or never. So just to bring joy into it, of being interested in what I'm doing and what we're doing, and just smiling and saying yes to life. And even though it's challenging, like I said, we can hold the hurt. Yeah, it hurts, and it's people are dying. At the same time, we have the opportunity to really make a difference and to bring a little light, a little joy into our own lives, which gives other people the opportunity and the modeling of doing the same.